When yoga instructor Zola Freeman refused billionaire Roman Blackwell's money, she never expected it to spark a journey of transformation, temptation, and love. But can a man who once believed everything had a price truly change? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of Zola Freeman's yoga studio in downtown Miami. The space was simple but elegant, with bamboo floors and white walls adorned with just a few inspirational quotes. This was Zola's sanctuary, built from years of hard work and determination. At 27, Zola was already making a name for herself as one of Miami's most sought-after yoga instructors. Her classes were always full, and her private sessions booked weeks in advance. But it wasn't just her skill that drew people in. There was something about Zola, her honey-toned skin that seemed to glow from within, her long locks that she often tied up in a colorful wrap, and most of all, her calm, centered presence. Remember to breathe, Zola instructed her morning class as they moved into their final pose. The breath is your anchor. After the class ended and the students filed out with grateful smiles, Zola checked her schedule for the day. Her assistant, Maya, had booked a new private client for the afternoon. "This one's different," Maya had said with raised eyebrows when she made the booking. His assistant called. "He's some big-shot CEO. Apparently the session is a gift." Zola had simply nodded. She didn't care if her clients were CEOs or cashiers. In her studio, everyone was equal, just bodies and souls seeking balance. She had just enough time to grab lunch at her favorite vegan cafe before the private session. As she walked the busy Miami streets, Zola called her mother, as she did almost every day. "Hey, Mama," she said when Elaine Freeman answered. "There's my girl." Elaine's warm voice came through. "How are you today, baby?" "I'm good. Just finished the morning class. How about you?" "Oh, just fine. My garden is blooming beautifully. Those tomatoes you like are almost ready." Elaine Freeman had raised Zola alone after her father left when she was just 3 years old. A social worker who had recently retired, Elaine had taught Zola the value of independence and self-worth. They didn't have much growing up, but Elaine had given Zola something more valuable than money. She'd given her strength. "I have a new client today," Zola mentioned as she waited for her lunch order. "Some rich businessman whose assistant booked him a session." "Well, remember what I always say? Rich doesn't mean better," Zola finished with a smile. "I know, Mama. Don't worry." After lunch, Zola returned to her studio to prepare for the private session. She dimmed the lights slightly and arranged 2 yoga mats in the center of the room. The appointment was for 2 p.m., but by 2:15, there was still no sign of her client. Just as she was about to call Maya to check if there had been a cancellation, the door swung open. The man who walked in wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than Zola's monthly rent. He was tall with broad shoulders, dark skin, and a closely trimmed beard. His eyes were sharp and assessing as they swept around the studio before landing on Zola. "You must be the yoga instructor," he said, not bothering with an introduction. "I'm Zola Freeman," she replied calmly. "And you're late." The man raised an eyebrow, clearly not used to being called out. "Roman Blackwell," he said, extending a hand. "And yes, I apologize for the delay. A meeting ran long." Zola nodded but didn't take his hand. "You'll need to change. The bathroom is through there. I have extra clothes if you need them." Roman looked down at his expensive suit. "I didn't bring anything to change into. My assistant didn't mention—" "Your assistant didn't ask, but it's fine. I have clothes that should fit you." Zola retrieved a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt from a cabinet and handed them to Roman. He looked at the simple clothes with barely concealed disdain, but took them and headed to the bathroom. When he emerged minutes later, he looked different, less like a CEO and more like an actual person. The t-shirt was a bit tight across his chest, revealing that beneath his business suits, Roman Blackwell was in excellent shape. "Let's begin," Zola said, gesturing to the mat across from hers. "We'll start with some basic breathing exercises." "I should warn you," Roman said, as he awkwardly lowered himself onto the mat. "I've never done yoga before. My assistant thought it would help with stress." "Everyone starts somewhere," Zola replied. "Just follow my lead." For the next hour, Zola guided Roman through a gentle sequence designed for beginners. Despite his initial reluctance, he followed her instructions carefully, though he struggled with even the simplest poses. "Straighten your back," Zola instructed, moving behind him to correct his posture. "And relax your shoulders." Roman tensed at her touch. "I'm not used to being told what to do," he said with a hint of amusement in his voice. "In this room, I'm the teacher and you're the student," Zola replied simply. Status doesn't matter here. By the end of the session, Roman was sweating and breathing hard. That was more challenging than I expected, he admitted as they moved into the final relaxation pose. Most people underestimate yoga, Zola said. They think it's just stretching, but it's about connecting your mind and body, finding balance. After the session ended, Roman changed back into his suit while Zola prepared some herbal tea, a courtesy she extended to all her private clients. Here, she said, handing him a cup. This will help with the soreness you'll feel tomorrow. Roman took the tea and sipped it, studying Zola over the rim of the cup. You're not what I expected, he said finally. What did you expect? Someone more... He paused, searching for the right word. Accommodating. Zola smiled. I'm here to teach yoga, Mr. Blackwell, not to accommodate egos. To her surprise, Roman laughed. Fair enough. He set down the cup and reached into his jacket, pulling out a business card and a sleek black credit card. I'd like to book a series of private sessions. Weekly, if possible. My assistant can coordinate with yours for the scheduling. Zola looked at the cards but didn't take them. We have a website. You can book sessions there like everyone else. Roman's eyebrows shot up. I prefer a more personal arrangement. Money isn't an issue. Name your price. I'm not for sale, Zola said calmly, and you can keep your card in your pocket. A flicker of surprise crossed Roman's face, quickly replaced by intrigue. I'm not trying to buy you, Miss Freeman. I'm trying to hire you for your professional services. And I'm telling you that you can book through the proper channels, just like my other clients. My time has value, Mr. Blackwell, and so does my work, but they're not for sale to the highest bidder. Roman stared at her for a long moment, then slowly returned the cards to his pocket. You're the first person who's ever turned down my money, he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. Then you've been dealing with the wrong people, Zola replied. After Roman left, Zola sat in meditation for a few minutes, clearing her mind of the encounter. There had been something unsettling about Roman Blackwell, not just his arrogance, but the way he had looked at her, as if she were a puzzle he wanted to solve. That evening, Zola visited her mother for dinner, as she did every Thursday. Elaine lived in a small but comfortable house in a modest neighborhood, with a garden that was her pride and joy. The moment Zola walked in, the familiar smell of her mother's cooking enveloped her. Something on your mind, baby? Elaine asked as they sat down to eat. You seem distracted, Zola sighed. Just a strange client today. One of those rich men who thinks money can buy anything, or anyone. Elaine nodded knowingly. Those types have always been around. They confuse having wealth with having worth. He wanted to arrange regular private sessions, Zola said, using air quotes. Acted like his time was more valuable than mine. And what did you tell him? To book online like everyone else, Zola said with a small smile. You should have seen his face, Mama. He looked like no one had ever said no to him before. Elaine reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. That's my girl. Never forget your value isn't determined by what others are willing to pay for it. Later that night, as Zola was closing up her studio after the evening class, her phone rang. It was Maya. Zola, you won't believe this, Maya said, her voice pitched with excitement. That CEO who came in today, Roman Blackwell, he just booked a month of sessions through the website. Paid in full. Zola was surprised but tried not to show it. That's unexpected. Unexpected? It's amazing. Do you know who he is? He's the founder of Black Tech Financial. The man is worth billions, and he left a note saying he wants you specifically as his instructor. That doesn't change anything, Maya. He'll be treated like any other client. After hanging up, Zola sat on her yoga mat, pondering this development. Why was Roman Blackwell so determined to work with her? Was it just because she had said no, or was there something else? 2 days later, Roman arrived for his next session, on time. He was dressed appropriately in athletic wear that probably cost more than most people's entire wardrobes, but at least he had made the effort. Ms. Freeman, he greeted her with a nod. Mr. Blackwell, she returned. Ready to begin? The session went more smoothly than the first. Roman was still stiff and struggling with the poses, but he was trying, which Zola appreciated. You have remarkable patience, Roman commented during a break. I must be your worst student. Not even close, Zola replied with a small smile. I once taught a group of kindergartners. That was a test of patience. Roman chuckled, a sound that seemed to surprise even him. I can imagine. Why are you here, Mr. Blackwell? Zola asked suddenly. And don't say it's for yoga. There are dozens of studios in Miami, many with far more famous instructors than me. Roman considered her question for a moment. Honestly? Because you intrigue me. Because I said no to you, Zola clarified. Partly, Roman admitted, but also Because in a city where everyone is trying to be seen, you seem content just to be. It's refreshing. Zola wasn't sure how to respond to that. Let's continue with the session. Over the next few weeks, Roman became a regular at Zola's studio. He always booked the last slot of the day, and sometimes after their sessions they would talk over tea. Despite her initial reservations, Zola found herself looking forward to these conversations. She learned that Roman had built his company from the ground up. Though he had come from money, he had refused his family's help, determined to succeed on his own terms. There was something almost admirable about that, though Zola remained wary of his obvious wealth and privilege. "You never talk about yourself," Roman noted one evening as they sat across from each other, steam rising from their cups. "There's not much to tell," Zola replied. "I grew up with my mom in a small house not far from here. We didn't have much, but we had enough. I started practicing yoga in high school and fell in love with it. Saved every penny to get certified as an instructor. Worked at other studios until I could open my own. Your mother must be proud." "She is," Zola smiled. "She taught me everything important, especially that my worth isn't tied to what I own or how I look." "She sounds wise," Roman said. "My family, well, they measured success differently. It was all about achievements, acquisitions. People were assets or obstacles." "That's a cold way to live," Zola observed. "It is," Roman agreed, surprising her with his honesty. "But it's the only way I've known, until recently." Their conversations never strayed into personal territory beyond these brief exchanges, but Zola could feel something shifting between them. Roman was still arrogant and used to getting his way, but there were moments when his guard dropped, revealing someone more complex than the entitled billionaire who had first walked into her studio. One day, Roman arrived looking particularly tense, his jaw tight and shoulders rigid. "Rough day?" Zola asked as they began their warm-up stretches. "You could say that," Roman replied tersely. "A deal fell through, a big one. And that's unusual for you, failure?" Roman's eyes flashed. "I don't fail, Miss Freeman. Everyone fails sometimes," Zola said calmly. "It's how we learn. In my world, failure isn't an option." "That sounds exhausting." Roman didn't respond, but throughout the session his movements were aggressive, almost angry. When they moved into a particularly challenging pose, he pushed too hard and lost his balance, falling awkwardly. "Damn it," he swore, pounding his fist on the mat. "That's enough for today," Zola said firmly. "We're not finished," Roman argued. "Yes, we are. Yoga isn't about forcing or fighting. It's about acceptance and balance. And right now, you're not in the right headspace." Roman stood, his expression stormy. "I'm paying for a full session, and I'm telling you professionally that continuing would be counterproductive." Zola crossed her arms. "You can stay for tea, or you can leave, but the yoga portion of today's session is over." For a moment, she thought he might argue further, but then his shoulders slumped slightly. "Fine, tea then." They sat in silence for a few minutes, Roman staring into his cup as if it held the answers to questions he hadn't asked. "I lost $100 million today," he finally said. "The company I wanted to acquire backed out at the last minute. They went with my competitor instead." "I'm sorry," Zola said and meant it. "That must be disappointing." Roman looked up, surprise evident on his face. "You're not going to tell me it's just money? That there are more important things?" "Would it help if I did?" Zola asked. "Besides, I imagine it's not just about the money for you. It's about winning, isn't it?" Roman's lips quirked in a half-smile. "You're more perceptive than most people I deal with." "I've spent years learning to read bodies and energy," Zola said with a shrug. "And you, Mr. Blackwell, are an open book in that regard. Your body betrays what your words conceal." "Call me Roman," he said suddenly. "All this Mr. Blackwell formality is becoming tiresome." "All right, Roman, and you can call me Zola." "Zola," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt on his tongue. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't date clients." "Then I'll stop being your client." Zola shook her head. "That's not the point. I'm not interested in being another acquisition, Roman. Another deal for you to close. That's not what I'm proposing." "Isn't it?" Zola challenged. "You're used to getting what you want. Right now, you want me. But I'm not for sale, and I'm not a prize to be won." Roman's expression hardened. "You're making assumptions about my intentions. Am I wrong?" He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough for Zola. "I think we should keep our relationship professional," she said gently. "I'm your yoga instructor, nothing more." Roman stood, his face a careful mask once again. "Of course, my apologies for overstepping." He left without another word, and Zola wondered if she had seen the last of him. The thought left her feeling oddly hollow. The next day, a massive arrangement of white orchids arrived at the studio. The card simply read, "You're right. I apologize. R." Zola stared at the flowers, unsure how to feel. On one hand, the gesture was clearly expensive, exactly the kind of material display she had criticized. On the other hand, the simple acknowledgement that she was right suggested that perhaps Roman was actually listening to her. When Roman arrived for his next scheduled session, Zola was ready for him. "The flowers were beautiful," she said as they prepared to begin, "but unnecessary." "I wanted to apologize properly," Roman replied. "And you think proper apologies require expensive gifts?" Roman paused, considering. "That's how it's always been done in my world. When you make a mistake, you send something valuable to smooth things over." "In my world," Zola said, "a sincere apology is valuable on its own. No orchids required." To her surprise, Roman smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually stern face. "I'm beginning to understand that our worlds are very different, Zola." "Yes, they are," she agreed, "but that doesn't mean they can't occasionally intersect." As they moved through their practice, Zola noticed something different about Roman. He was more present, more focused on the movements rather than the goal. When he struggled with a pose, he didn't push through with force but adjusted and tried again with patience. At the end of the session, as they sat cross-legged for the final meditation, Zola said quietly, "Close your eyes and focus on your breath. Let everything else fall away. Your work, your worries, your wealth. In this moment, you are not Roman Blackwell's CEO. You are just Roman, a human being connected to the earth and sky like everyone else." When they opened their eyes, Roman was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Thank you," he said simply. As he was leaving, Roman turned back. "I understand that you don't date clients, and I respect that boundary, but I would like to get to know you better, Zola. Perhaps we could start as friends." Zola studied him for a moment, searching for the usual signs of manipulation or ulterior motives she had come to expect from men like him. But all she saw was genuine interest, and perhaps a hint of vulnerability that he wasn't entirely comfortable showing. "Friends," she said finally. "I suppose we could try that." Roman's smile was worth the risk she was taking. "I look forward to it." As he walked out the door, Zola wondered if she was making a mistake. Roman Blackwell lived in a world of power and money, where relationships were transactions and people were commodities. Could someone like him ever truly understand her values? Could he change, or would he eventually try to change her? Only time would tell. But for now, Zola was cautiously intrigued by the man who had walked into her studio with arrogance and was slowly learning humility. The billionaire who seemed genuinely interested in the woman who had dared to tell him no. The Miami sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink as Zola locked up her studio for the evening. Just as she turned to leave, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The driver's window rolled down, revealing Roman behind the wheel. "Need a ride?" he asked, a hint of uncertainty in his voice that Zola had never heard before. Zola hesitated. "I usually take the bus." "I know," Roman said, "but friends give friends rides, don't they?" It had been 2 weeks since they had agreed to try friendship, and true to his word, Roman had kept their relationship strictly platonic. He still came for his yoga sessions, but he had stopped trying to impress her with his wealth or status. "All right," Zola decided, sliding into the passenger seat. She was surprised to see that Roman was driving himself rather than being chauffeured as she had expected. "No driver today?" she asked as they pulled away from the curb. Roman shrugged. "I do know how to drive, you know. I just usually don't have the time. And today you do." "I made time," he said simply. As they drove through the busy streets of Miami, Zola directed Roman to her small apartment in a modest neighborhood, far from the glitzy high-rises where she assumed he lived. To his credit, Roman didn't comment on the location. "Would you like to come up for tea?" Zola offered when they arrived, surprising herself with the invitation. Roman looked equally surprised. "I'd like that." Zola's apartment was small but warm and inviting, with plants on every available surface and colorful textiles adorning the walls. It was a stark contrast to the sleek, modern aesthetic that surrounded Roman in his corporate life. "It's very you," Roman commented as he looked around. "Is that a compliment or a criticism?" Zola asked, putting the kettle on. "Definitely a compliment," he assured her. "My place is all chrome and glass, designed by some famous decorator. It looks like a magazine spread, but it doesn't feel like a home." They sat on Zola's worn but comfortable couch, sipping tea and talking about nothing in particular. It was the most normal interaction they'd had, away from the structure of the yoga studio. "Can I ask you something personal?" Roman said after a comfortable lull in the conversation. "You can ask. I might not answer." "Fair enough," he smiled. "Why yoga? Of all the things you could have done with your life, why choose this path?" Zola considered the question. "When I was 16, my mom got sick. Cancer. She's fine now," she added quickly, seeing Roman's expression. "But back then it was scary. We didn't have much money for treatment, and I was worried all the time. A teacher at school suggested I try yoga to help with stress. And it worked? It did more than work. It changed everything for me. For the first time, I found a place where I could just be, where I didn't have to worry about money or status or whether we'd lose our house. On the mat, none of that mattered." Roman nodded thoughtfully. "I've never had anything like that. A sanctuary. Everyone needs one," Zola said softly, "especially people with high-stress lives like yours." When Roman left that evening, something had shifted between them. The caution was still there. Zola wasn't naive enough to believe that a few conversations could fundamentally change a man like Roman Blackwell, but there was also a new comfort, a sense that perhaps they weren't as different as they had first appeared. The next morning, Zola was in the middle of her first class when Maya burst into the studio, her face flushed with excitement. "Sorry to interrupt," she said breathlessly, "but you need to see this." She thrust her phone into Zola's hands. On the screen was an article from a local business magazine with the headline, "Black Tech CEO Launches Free Financial Literacy Program for Underserved Communities." The article detailed how Roman Blackwell had just announced a new initiative to provide financial education and resources to low-income neighborhoods across Miami, with no strings attached. The program would offer workshops, one-on-one counseling, and even small business grants. "Is this because of you?" Maya whispered excitedly. "Don't be ridiculous," Zola said, though she couldn't help wondering the same thing. Mr. Blackwell makes his own decisions. But later that day, when Roman arrived for his session, Zola couldn't resist asking. "I saw the news about your new program," she said as they prepared for their practice. "It's impressive." Roman looked almost embarrassed. "It's something I've been thinking about for a while. After our conversations, well, let's just say you made me see some things differently." "I did? You talked about growing up without much money, how your mother struggled. It made me realize that most people don't have the advantages I had. Financial knowledge is power, and it shouldn't be hoarded by those who already have it." Zola was genuinely touched. That's really wonderful, Roman. Don't look so surprised," he said with a small smile. "Even sharks evolve." As the weeks passed, Roman and Zola's friendship deepened. They began spending time together outside of the yoga studio. Nothing romantic, just two people getting to know each other. They went for coffee, walked on the beach, and once even attended a free concert in the park. What impressed Zola most was that Roman seemed to be making a genuine effort to step outside his privileged bubble. He dressed more casually when they were together, left his expensive watch at home, and never suggested the high-end restaurants or exclusive clubs that were surely part of his usual social circuit. "You know," Zola said one evening as they walked along the shoreline, the waves gently lapping at their bare feet, "you don't have to pretend to be someone else for me. I'm not against wealth itself, just the belief that it makes someone more valuable or deserving." Roman looked out at the horizon. "I'm not pretending. For the first time in my life, I'm just being me. Not Roman Blackwell, CEO, just Roman. And how does it feel?" "Terrifying," he admitted with a laugh, "but also right." The moment was interrupted by the ringing of Roman's phone. He checked the screen and frowned. "I have to take this. It's my sister." Zola nodded and walked ahead a bit to give him privacy. She had heard Roman mention his sister once or twice, always with a hint of regret in his voice. From what she gathered, they had been close once but had drifted apart years ago. When Roman rejoined her, his expression was troubled. "Everything okay?" Zola asked. "My sister Vanessa is in town. She wants to meet for dinner tomorrow." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Zola had come to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. "We haven't spoken in person for almost 3 years. What happened between you two?" Roman was quiet for a moment. "She left the family business, and the family. Said we were emotionally bankrupt, that our obsession with money and status had destroyed any real connections between us." He sighed. "She wasn't wrong. And now she wants to reconnect. Apparently. She's been following the news about my financial literacy program. She said it reminded her of the brother she used to know." Zola touched his arm gently. "That's a good thing, isn't it?" "I don't know," Roman admitted. "Family is complicated." "Yes, it is," Zola agreed. But sometimes it's worth the effort. The next evening, Zola received a text from Roman. Dinner with Vanessa went better than expected. Thank you for encouraging me. Can we talk tomorrow? Zola smiled as she texted back, I'm glad. Yes, come by the studio after my last class. But Roman didn't show up the next day, or the day after. He missed his scheduled yoga session without explanation, and when Zola tried calling, her calls went straight to voicemail. It wasn't like him, and despite her best efforts not to, Zola found herself worried. On the third day, Maya rushed into the studio, her face pale. Zola, you need to see this. Once again, she handed Zola her phone. This time, the headline made Zola's heart sink. Black Tech CEO Roman Blackwell hospitalized after collapse. According to the article, Roman had collapsed during a board meeting and was admitted to Miami General Hospital. The official statement cited exhaustion and stress, but sources within the company hinted at deeper problems. Without thinking twice, Zola cancelled her afternoon classes and headed to the hospital. She wasn't family, so she didn't expect to be allowed to see Roman, but she had to try. To her surprise, when she gave her name at the reception desk, the nurse's eyes widened in recognition. Ms. Freeman? Mr. Blackwell has you on his approved visitors list. Room 512. Confused but relieved, Zola made her way to Roman's room. She found him sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert, his attention focused on a laptop balanced on his knees. You're supposed to be resting, Zola said from the doorway. Roman looked up, a smile breaking across his tired face. Zola, you came. Of course I came. You disappeared for 3 days and then ended up in the hospital. What happened? Roman closed the laptop and set it aside. Officially, exhaustion and dehydration. Unofficially, a wake-up call. Zola moved to sit in the chair beside his bed. What do you mean? The dinner with Vanessa went well. Really well, actually. We talked for hours, cleared the air about a lot of things. She told me how she's built a life that actually makes her happy. She's a teacher now, married to a nurse. They don't have much money, but they have purpose. He shook his head. I realized I haven't been happy in years. Maybe ever. And this realization was so shocking it put you in the hospital? Zola asked, only half joking. No, what put me in the hospital was going back to work the next day and realizing I couldn't keep living the way I have been. In the middle of a board meeting, I just couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything I've been working for suddenly seemed meaningless. Zola reached out and took his hand. That sounds scary. It was, Roman admitted, but also clarifying. The doctors say it was a panic attack, not a heart attack. A warning, not a death sentence. So what now? That's what I've been thinking about for the past 2 days. Roman squeezed her hand. I want to make changes. Real ones. Not just token charitable programs, but a fundamental shift in how I live and work. That's a big decision, Zola said carefully. Are you sure it's not just the medication talking? Roman laughed. I'm not on any medication. And yes, I'm sure. Meeting you, it was like waking up from a long sleep. You showed me there's another way to live, with integrity, with purpose, without using money as a measure of worth. Zola felt a flutter in her chest, but kept her expression neutral. I'm flattered, but this has to be about what you want, Roman, not about impressing me. It's not about impressing you, he assured her. It's about becoming the kind of person I can respect when I look in the mirror, the kind of person who deserves, he paused, looking into her eyes, friendship with someone like you. The way he said friendship made it clear he was thinking of something more, but he didn't push it. Zola appreciated his restraint. Well, she said, standing up, the first step to becoming that person is getting proper rest. No more work until the doctors clear you. Roman saluted playfully. Yes, ma'am. As Zola turned to leave, Roman called after her. Zola, thank you. For coming. For caring. That's what friends do, she replied with a smile. The following week, Roman was released from the hospital and, true to his word, began making changes. He appointed his trusted COO to handle day-to-day operations at Black Tech while he took a step back to reevaluate his priorities. He resumed his yoga sessions with Zola, but now he also joined her regular classes, becoming just another student on the mat. One day, after class, Roman approached Zola with an idea. I've been thinking about your community outreach plans, he said, referring to a project Zola had mentioned wanting to start. Free yoga classes for underserved neighborhoods. What about them? I want to help. Not with money, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Well, not just with money. I want to volunteer, help set things up, hand out mats, whatever you need. Zola studied him, looking for any hint of ulterior motive, but found none. You want to volunteer, you Roman Blackwell billionaire CEO, former workaholic billionaire CEO, he corrected with a grin. Current, aspiring, decent human being. Besides, I've learned a lot from you. I'd like to pay it forward. And so, to the astonishment of Maya and the rest of Zola's staff, Roman began showing up on Saturday mornings to help with the community classes. He arrived in an ordinary car, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, and worked alongside everyone else, setting up mats, distributing water bottles, and even sweeping the floor after class. Word got out, of course. It was impossible for someone as high-profile as Roman to volunteer anonymously for long. Soon, business magazines and local news outlets were running stories about the billionaire yogi, as they dubbed him. I'm sorry about all the attention, Roman said to Zola, after a particularly persistent photographer had disrupted one of their community classes. This isn't what I wanted. I know, Zola assured him, but maybe it's not all bad. You're setting an example for other people with privilege. Maybe, Roman conceded, but I didn't do it for publicity. I know that too, Zola said softly. Their friendship continued to grow, evolving into something neither of them had quite expected. They still maintained professional boundaries during yoga sessions, but outside the studio, they were becoming increasingly important parts of each other's lives. Roman met Zola's mother, Elaine, who regarded him with initial suspicion, but gradually warmed to him as she saw the genuine respect he showed her daughter. For his part, Roman brought Zola to dinner with his sister Vanessa and her husband, a warm gathering that bore no resemblance to the cold, formal family events he had described from his past. One evening, after they had spent the day helping at a community health fair where Zola had offered free yoga demonstrations, Roman drove her home. Instead of saying goodbye at the curb as usual, he asked if he could come up. There's something I want to talk to you about, he said, an unfamiliar nervousness in his voice. Upstairs, Zola made tea while Roman paced her small living room. Just say whatever it is, Zola said, handing him a steaming mug. You're making me nervous. Roman took a deep breath. I've been offered a partnership with Global Health Initiatives. They want black tech to develop affordable financial technology for developing countries. Roman, that's amazing, Zola exclaimed. It's exactly the kind of meaningful work you've been talking about. There's a catch, he said, his expression troubled. I would need to relocate to their headquarters in Singapore for at least a year, possibly longer. Zola felt her heart sink, but she kept her face neutral. I see. I haven't given them an answer yet, Roman continued. I wanted to talk to you first. Why? This is your decision, Roman. Your career. Because, he set down his tea and moved closer to her, you've become important to me, Zola. More important than any business deal or career opportunity. Zola felt her pulse quicken. What are you saying? I'm saying that I care about you. As more than a friend, I think I have for a while now. Roman. I know. He held up his hands. You don't date clients. But I'm not just your client anymore, am I? We're friends. We've gotten to know each other. And I hope there could be something more between us. Zola looked away, trying to sort through her feelings. The truth was, she had developed feelings for Roman too. She had watched him change over the past months, seen him struggle with his priorities, and emerge as someone different, someone who still had flaws and blind spots, but was genuinely trying to be better. What about Singapore? She asked quietly. I don't have to take the offer, or, he hesitated, you could come with me. Zola's head snapped up. Come with you and do what? Be your girlfriend who follows you around the world? That's not what I meant, Roman said quickly. You could bring your yoga expertise to communities there. It could be a partnership, personal and professional. Roman, my life is here, my studio, my mother, the community I've built. I know, he said, running a hand through his hair. I know, and I'm not asking you to give that up. I don't know what I'm asking. He sighed heavily. This is why I've avoided real relationships for so long. They're complicated. Despite herself, Zola smiled. Yes, they are. Roman looked at her, his eyes serious. I don't want to lose you, Zola, but I also don't want to pass up an opportunity to do something meaningful with my resources and skills. You shouldn't have to choose, Zola said, and neither should I. So what do we do? I don't know, Zola admitted, but whatever it is, we should decide as friends first. The rest we can figure out later. Roman nodded slowly. Friends first, I can live with that. As he left that night, Roman paused at the door. For what it's worth, he said, meeting you has been the best thing that's happened to me in a very long time. Whatever comes next, I wanted you to know that. After he was gone, Zola sat on her couch, her tea growing cold beside her. She had spent months keeping Roman at arm's length, wary of his wealth and the power imbalance between them, but somewhere along the way he had changed, or perhaps she had just seen the person who was there all along, beneath the expensive suits and arrogant facade. Now he was leaving, potentially moving halfway around the world, just when she was ready to admit her feelings for him. The irony wasn't lost on her. Zola picked up her phone and called the one person who always helped her see clearly. "Mama, can I come over? I need to talk." An hour later, Zola sat at her mother's kitchen table, pouring out the whole story. Elaine listened patiently, her wise eyes taking in her daughter's conflicted expression. "So," Elaine said when Zola had finished, "you've fallen for this man." "I didn't say that," Zola protested weakly. "You didn't have to, baby. It's written all over your face." Elaine reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "What can I do? He's going to Singapore. Maybe. Or maybe he's waiting for a reason to stay." Zola shook her head. "I can't be that reason, Mama. I can't ask him to give up an opportunity to do real good in the world just to be with me." "And you shouldn't," Elaine agreed. "But don't let a man confuse interest with intention, baby. One fades when it gets hard. The other shows up in silence." "What do you mean?" "I mean," Elaine said gently, "that if he's serious about you, about a future with you, he'll find a way to make it work. Distance, time zones, different continents, those are just logistics. The question is whether his feelings for you are stronger than the obstacles." Zola pondered her mother's words. "And what about my feelings? Am I ready for this? For him?" "Only you can answer that, baby. But I will say this. I've watched that man change over these past months, not just in how he dresses or where he spends his time, but in how he carries himself, in how he looks at you." Elaine squeezed her daughter's hand. "That kind of change doesn't happen unless someone's heart is truly engaged." Later that night, as Zola lay in bed unable to sleep, her phone buzzed with a text from Roman. "I've been thinking about our conversation. Can we meet tomorrow? There's something important I need to tell you." Zola stared at the message, her heart racing. Was he going to tell her he had accepted the position, or that he had turned it down? Either way, she realized, she needed to be honest with him and with herself about her feelings. "Yes," she texted back, "let's meet at the beach at sunset." Whatever happened next, Zola knew that her life had been changed by the entitled CEO who had walked into her studio months ago, the man who had learned to show up without his armor of wealth and status, who had revealed a heart capable of growth and genuine connection, the man who, against all odds, had earned her respect and possibly her heart. As she drifted off to sleep, Zola wondered what tomorrow would bring. Would Roman choose his career, or would he choose her? And if he asked her to go with him, would she be brave enough to say yes? The answers would come with the setting sun. For now, all Zola knew was that for the first time in her life, she was willing to risk her carefully guarded heart for a chance at something real, even if that something came in the unexpected package of a reformed billionaire who had once thought everything and everyone had a price. The beach was quiet as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant shades of orange and pink. Zola arrived early, her bare feet sinking into the cool sand as she walked along the shoreline. Her mind was racing with thoughts of Roman and what he might want to tell her. She spotted him in the distance, standing near the water's edge. He wasn't wearing his usual business attire, but simple khaki shorts and a white linen shirt that billowed slightly in the ocean breeze. He looked different here, more relaxed, more human. "Hey," she said as she approached. Roman turned, his face breaking into a smile that made her heart skip. "Hey, yourself." They stood side by side for a moment, watching the waves crash against the shore. "So," Zola finally said, "you wanted to talk?" Roman took a deep breath. "I turned down the Singapore position." Zola's eyes widened. "What? Why?" "I negotiated a different arrangement," he explained. "I'll oversee the project from here with quarterly trips to Singapore, a week or two at most, not a permanent relocation." "Roman, you didn't have to do that. Not for me. I didn't do it just for you," he said, turning to face her. "Though you were a big part of the decision. I did it because I've built something meaningful here, not just at Black Tech, but in the community, with the outreach programs, with you." Zola felt a mixture of relief and guilt. "I don't want to be the reason you compromise your dreams." "You're not a compromise, Zola," Roman said softly. "You're a priority." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and steady. "I've spent my life chasing success," Roman continued. "Bigger deals, more money, greater power. It was never enough. Then I met you. The woman who said no, who made me question everything I thought I knew about value and worth. Zola looked up at him, her heart pounding. I'm not perfect, Roman. I have flaws, insecurities. I'm not some spiritual guru with all the answers. I know that, he said with a small smile. You snore when you doze off during meditation. You're impatient with slow drivers. You get cranky when you're hungry. Zola laughed despite herself. Not exactly selling myself here. But that's just it, Roman said, his expression growing serious. I don't want some perfect, unattainable ideal. I want you, the real you with all your contradictions and complexities. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Zola. For months, she had kept her guard up, wary of his wealth and what it represented. But watching him change, seeing him struggle with his priorities and choose a different path, it had affected her more than she wanted to admit. I have feelings for you too, she confessed quietly. But I'm scared, Roman. We come from such different worlds. We do, he agreed. And that's not going to change overnight. I'll still have money and privilege that you don't. You'll still have wisdom and groundedness that I'm learning. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we balance each other. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the sand, Roman pulled Zola closer. I'm not asking for forever right now, he said. Just a chance. A real date. Not as friends, not as yoga instructor and student. Just Zola and Roman, seeing where this might lead. Zola looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of the entitled CEO who had first walked into her studio. All she saw was the man who had volunteered at community classes, who had reconnected with his sister, who had chosen what was meaningful over what was prestigious. Okay, she said with a smile. One date. Roman's face lit up. Really? Really? But I'm not going to any fancy five-star restaurant where they serve tiny portions on huge plates. Roman laughed. Deal. I know just the place. Their first official date was at a small Cuban restaurant in Little Havana, a family-owned place with mismatched chairs, paper napkins, and the best food Zola had ever tasted. Roman had discovered it during one of his community outreach programs and had befriended the owners, an elderly couple who treated him like a son rather than a billionaire. This is perfect, Zola said as they shared a plate of tostones. How did you know? I'm learning, Roman replied with a smile. Slowly but surely. As they talked over dinner, Zola found herself opening up more than she had before, telling Roman about her childhood dreams, her struggles to build her business, her fears and hopes for the future. In turn, Roman shared stories from his past, not just the success stories, but the failures, the doubts, the moments of loneliness at the top. My father used to say that emotions were a luxury for people who couldn't afford success, Roman said, his expression distant. He taught me that relationships were transactions, you give to get, always with an end goal in mind. That's a cold way to live, Zola observed. It is, Roman agreed, and lonely. I didn't realize how lonely until recently. As they walked back to his car after dinner, Roman's hand found hers again, their fingers intertwining naturally now. Thank you for tonight, he said softly. For what? Eating delicious food and having a nice conversation? Wasn't exactly a hardship, Zola teased. For giving me a chance, Roman clarified. I know it wasn't easy for you to lower your walls. They're still there, Zola admitted. Just maybe not as high as before. When they reached her apartment, Roman walked her to the door but didn't ask to come up. Instead, he leaned down and kissed her cheek gently. Good night, Zola Freeman. Good night, Roman Blackwell. As she watched him walk away, Zola touched her cheek where his lips had been, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. For all her caution, all her boundaries, she couldn't deny the way her heart had opened to this man, who was so different from anyone she had ever known. Over the next few weeks, Roman and Zola's relationship blossomed. They saw each other almost daily, either at the yoga studio or in their free time. Roman kept his promise about the Singapore project, overseeing it remotely while remaining firmly rooted in Miami. His change in priorities didn't go unnoticed in the business world. Business magazines ran speculative pieces about his career downshift, with some questioning whether the once ruthless CEO was losing his edge. Does it bother you? Zola asked one evening, as they sat on her small balcony, sharing a simple dinner she had cooked. What they're saying about you? Roman considered the question. 6 months ago it would have. My reputation as a shark was everything to me. He shrugged. Now, I care more about whether I'm doing right by the people who matter. My employees, the communities we serve, you. Me? Zola smiled. Yes, you. Roman said, reaching across the table to take her hand. The woman who taught me that there are things money can't buy: respect, integrity, love. It was the first time either of them had used that word, love, and it hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Before Zola could respond, Roman's phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. "It's my assistant. I should take this." He stepped inside to answer the call, his expression growing increasingly troubled as he listened. When he returned to the balcony, his face was grim. "I have to go. There's an emergency board meeting." "What's wrong?" Zola asked, concerned. "Marcus Davis is making a move," Roman explained, naming his biggest business rival. "He's trying to convince the board to vote me out as CEO, claiming my recent behavior indicates I'm no longer fit to lead the company." Zola's stomach dropped. "Because of your community work? Because of us?" "Partly," Roman admitted, "but mostly because I've been directing more company resources towards socially responsible initiatives instead of just maximizing profit. Davis has been waiting for an opportunity like this." "What will you do?" Roman's jaw set in a determined line. "Fight. Black Tech is more than just a company to me. It's my vision, my legacy. I want it to stand for something better than just making money." "Do you need me to do anything?" Zola asked. Roman smiled, though the worry didn't leave his eyes. "Just be you. That's enough." The next few days were tense. Roman was constantly in meetings, strategizing with his allies on the board and trying to counter Marcus Davis's influence. Zola gave him space, but made sure he knew she was there for him. Then, 3 days after the emergency meeting, Maya burst into the yoga studio, waving her phone excitedly. "Zola, have you seen this? Your boyfriend is all over the news. He's not my—" Zola began automatically, then caught herself. "What news?" Maya thrust her phone into Zola's hands. The headline read, "Black Tech CEO faces showdown at annual charity gala tonight." The article detailed how Marcus Davis had publicly challenged Roman's leadership, claiming that his recent infatuation with a local yoga instructor and his bleeding heart projects were distractions from his duties as CEO. The confrontation was expected to come to a head at the annual Miami Business Leaders Charity Gala that evening, where both men would be in attendance. Zola felt her cheeks burn. She had never wanted to be in the spotlight, and now she was being portrayed as some kind of gold-digging distraction. Her phone rang. It was Roman. "I'm guessing you've seen the news," he said when she answered. "Just now." "Roman, I'm so sorry. I never meant to cause problems for you." "You haven't caused any problems," he said firmly. "Davis is just using you as an excuse. This is about power and money, not about us." "What happens now?" "The gala tonight. Most of the board will be there, along with major shareholders. Davis thinks he can humiliate me publicly, make me look weak or compromised." Zola hesitated. "Do you want me to stay away? It might be easier if I'm not there." "Actually," Roman said, his voice softening, "I was hoping you would come with me, not to prove anything to anyone else, but because having you there would mean a lot to me." Zola was torn. The last thing she wanted was to be thrust into the glitzy, high-society world that Roman came from, but she also didn't want him to face this alone. "All right," she said finally. "I'll come." "Thank you," Roman said, relief evident in his voice. "I'll pick you up at 7. After hanging up, Zola stared at her closet in dismay. She didn't own anything remotely suitable for a high-society charity gala. The few dresses she had were simple, casual things, meant for everyday wear, not for rubbing elbows with Miami's elite. In desperation, she called Vanessa, Roman's sister, who had become a friend over the past months. "I need help," Zola admitted, after explaining the situation. "Say no more," Vanessa replied. "I'll be at your place in an hour." True to her word, Vanessa arrived carrying several garment bags. "Options," she explained with a grin. "None of them too flashy or expensive looking. I know your style." Zola was touched by the thoughtfulness. "Thank you for this. I'm way out of my depth here." "You'll be fine," Vanessa assured her as they went through the dresses. "Just be yourself. That's what Roman loves about you anyway." Zola paused. "He said that he loves me." Vanessa smiled. "He doesn't have to say it. It's written all over his face whenever he talks about you. I haven't seen my brother this happy, well, ever." Zola chose a simple but elegant navy blue dress that fit her perfectly. It was understated enough to make her feel comfortable, but formal enough for the occasion. "Perfect," Vanessa declared. "Now, let's do something with that gorgeous hair of yours." By the time Roman arrived to pick her up, Zola felt as ready as she could be. Her locks were arranged in an elegant updo, and she had applied light makeup that enhanced her natural beauty without looking overdone. Roman's eyes widened when she opened the door. "You look incredible," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "So do you," Zola replied, taking in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. He looked every inch the powerful CEO tonight, but his eyes were still warm when they looked at her. "Ready for this?" he asked as they walked to his car. "Not even a little bit," Zola admitted, "but I'm here for you." The Miami Business Leaders Charity Gala was being held at the Grand Ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton, a venue so opulent it made Zola feel even more out of place. As they entered, all eyes seemed to turn toward them. "Ignore them," Roman whispered, his hand firm at the small of her back. "They're just curious." Zola nodded, holding her head high as they made their way through the crowd. She recognized some faces from business magazines and news reports, the who's who of Miami's wealthy elite. Roman introduced her to several people, board members and business associates, who regarded her with varying degrees of curiosity, and in some cases, barely concealed disdain. "So you're the yoga instructor," one woman said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "How interesting." "Yes, I own a studio downtown," Zola replied evenly. "And you are?" The woman looked taken aback, clearly not used to being unrecognized. "Eleanor Davis, Marcus's wife." "Ah," Zola said, understanding dawning. "Nice to meet you." Before Eleanor could respond, a tall man appeared at her side, Marcus Davis himself. He was handsome in a polished, artificial way, with cold eyes that assessed Zola like she was a commodity. "Roman," he greeted without warmth, "and this must be the famous yoga girl I've been hearing so much about." "Zola Freeman," she introduced herself, extending her hand. Marcus took it, his grip a little too firm. "Charmed, I'm sure. Tell me, Ms. Freeman, do you have any business experience? Any education in finance or technology?" "No," Zola said honestly. "My expertise is in holistic wellness and mindfulness practices." "How fascinating," Marcus said with a smirk. "And yet Roman seems to value your perspective on how to run a multi-billion-dollar company." Roman's jaw tightened. "Zola has nothing to do with my business decisions, Davis. Though her values of integrity and community service have certainly reminded me of what's truly important." "Values don't pay dividends," Marcus retorted, "but I suppose when you're spending your time handing out yoga mats in the projects instead of focusing on shareholder value, such distinctions become blurred." Zola felt Roman tense beside her. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. "It was nice meeting you both," she said to Marcus and Eleanor. "If you'll excuse us." As they walked away, Roman let out a slow breath. "I'm sorry about that." "Don't be," Zola said. "His opinion doesn't matter to me." The evening continued with dinner and speeches, Roman seated at a prominent table with other business leaders, while Zola was at his side. She could feel curious stares and hear whispered comments, but she focused on projecting the same calm confidence she brought to her yoga classes. After dinner, the event's host announced that several business leaders would be speaking about their charitable initiatives. Roman was scheduled to speak last. Marcus Davis went first, delivering a polished speech about his company's foundation and the tax-deductible donations they had made to various causes. It was all very corporate, very strategic, philanthropy as a business move rather than a genuine desire to help. When it was Roman's turn, he approached the podium with confidence. He looked out over the crowd, his gaze finding Zola briefly before he began. "Good evening, everyone. I had a prepared speech about Black Tech's charitable initiatives, but instead, I'd like to speak from the heart tonight." A murmur went through the crowd. "For most of my career, I've measured success in dollars and cents, in acquisitions and market share, in power." Roman paused. "But recently, I've been challenged to reconsider what true success looks like." Zola could see Marcus Davis whispering to the people at his table, smirking. "True success isn't just about what you have," Roman continued. "It's about what you give. It's about the impact you make on the lives of others. It's about using your privilege and power to lift people up, not just to elevate yourself." The room had grown quiet, everyone listening intently. "Some have suggested that my recent focus on community initiatives indicates that I've lost my edge as a CEO, that my personal relationships have distracted me from my duties." His eyes found Zola again. "To them, I say this. I haven't lost anything. I've gained perspective." Roman squared his shoulders. "Black Tech will continue to be profitable. We will continue to innovate and grow. But we will do it with integrity and purpose. We will be successful not despite our community commitments, but because of them. He looked directly at Marcus Davis. And to those who see compassion as weakness, who view people as commodities, who think that money is the only measure of worth, I feel sorry for you, because you're missing out on what truly matters in this life. A hush fell over the room. Then, from somewhere in the back, someone began to applaud. Others joined in, the applause building until most of the room was on their feet. Zola felt tears prick at her eyes as she watched Roman return to their table, his face flushed with emotion. "That was quite a speech," she said when he sat down. "I meant every word," he replied, taking her hand under the table. Later, as they mingled during the post-dinner reception, several board members approached Roman to express their support. Even some who had been wavering seemed impressed by his passionate defense of his vision for the company. "I think you've won this round," Zola observed as they stood together near the bar. "It's not about winning," Roman said. "It's about standing up for what I believe in." He looked at her tenderly. "Something I learned from you." As the evening wound down, a reporter approached them, notepad in hand. "Mr. Blackwell, can I get a quote about tonight's events? And perhaps introduce your date, the yoga instructor I've been hearing about." Roman looked at the reporter, then at Zola, a question in his eyes. She nodded slightly, giving him permission to respond. "This is Zola Freeman," Roman said. "She owns Freeman Yoga and Wellness Center downtown. And yes, she's also the woman I'm dating." The reporter's eyes gleamed with interest. "And how did you two meet?" "It's an unusual pairing, the billionaire CEO and the yoga instructor." Roman smiled. "We met when I walked into her studio, late and entitled, thinking I could buy her time and attention." "And?" the reporter prompted. "And she told me to keep my card in my pocket," Roman said with a laugh. "She's the only person who's ever said no to me. The only one who saw me, not my money or my power." The reporter turned to Zola. "And what about you, Miss Freeman? What attracted you to Mr. Blackwell?" Zola considered the question carefully. "Nothing, at first," she admitted. "I thought he was just another rich man with a god complex." The reporter's eyebrows shot up, and Roman chuckled beside her. "But then," Zola continued, "I watched him change. Not because he wanted to impress me, but because he wanted to be better, to do better. He showed up when it was hard. He listened. He learned." She looked up at Roman, her eyes soft. "That's the man I fell for. Not the billionaire, but the human being beneath all that." The reporter scribbled furiously. "So it's serious between you two?" Before either could answer, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Marcus Davis was leaving in a hurry, his face thunderous. Behind him, several board members were huddled in intense conversation. "Excuse us," Roman said to the reporter, leading Zola toward the group. "What's happening?" he asked one of his allies on the board. "Davis just got word that 3 major shareholders have decided to back you," the man explained with a grin. "His attempt to oust you is dead in the water. The votes aren't there." Relief washed over Roman's face. "Thank you for letting me know." As they walked away, Zola squeezed his hand. "Congratulations." "It's not over," Roman cautioned. "Davis won't give up that easily, but for tonight at least, we can breathe." They left the gala shortly after, both exhausted from the emotional evening. In the car, Roman was quiet, lost in thought. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Zola asked. "I was just thinking about how much has changed," he replied. 6 months ago, all I cared about was the next deal, the next acquisition. My life was full of things, but empty of meaning." He glanced at her. "Then you walked into it, or rather I walked into your studio and everything shifted." "I'm not responsible for your transformation, Roman," Zola said gently. "You did that work yourself. You showed me it was possible," he insisted. "You showed me another way to live, to measure success." When they reached Zola's apartment, Roman walked her to the door as usual. But this time, the air between them felt charged with something new, something that had been building all evening. "Thank you for coming tonight," Roman said softly, "for standing by me." "That's what you do when you care about someone," Zola replied, looking up into his eyes. Roman cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "I more than care about you, Zola Freeman. I love you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. No grand gestures, no expensive gifts, just the simple truth of his feelings. Zola's heart raced. She had known this was coming, had felt it growing between them, but hearing him say the words made it real in a way she hadn't been prepared for. "You don't have to say it back," Roman added quickly. "I just wanted you to know." Zola placed her hand over his. "I love you too," she said softly, Despite all my walls and worries, despite our differences, I love the man you're becoming, Roman Blackwell. He leaned down and kissed her then, a kiss that felt like a beginning, like a promise. When they finally pulled apart, Roman rested his forehead against hers. I never thought I'd be grateful for someone telling me no, he murmured, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Zola smiled. And now? Now, Roman said, his eyes full of love. I'm hoping you'll say yes. To what? To everything. To us. To seeing where this journey takes us. Zola pretended to consider it, a smile playing at her lips. Well, since you asked so nicely, yes. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms under the soft glow of the porch light, Zola marveled at the unexpected turns life could take. She had built walls to protect herself from men like Roman, never imagining that one of them would find the courage and humility to climb those walls stone by stone, not to conquer, but to connect. And Roman, who had spent his life believing that everything and everyone had a price, had finally found the one thing money couldn't buy. A love born not from transaction, but from transformation. 3 months had passed since the charity gala, and life had settled into a new rhythm for Zola and Roman. Their relationship had deepened, growing stronger with each passing day. Roman had successfully maintained his position as CEO of Black Tech, while continuing to shift the company toward more socially responsible initiatives. Zola's yoga studio was thriving, with her community outreach programs reaching more people than ever. On a warm Sunday morning, they were having breakfast on Zola's small balcony when Roman's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's the office," he said apologetically. "I should take this." Zola nodded, sipping her tea as Roman stepped inside to answer the call. She could hear snippets of his conversation, something about an urgent meeting in Singapore. When he returned to the balcony, his expression was troubled. "What's wrong?" Zola asked. "There's a problem with the Singapore project," Roman explained. "Some of the local partners are threatening to pull out. I need to go there immediately to sort things out." "How long will you be gone?" "A week, maybe 2, Roman sighed. "I'm sorry. I know we had plans for your mother's birthday next weekend." Zola reached across the table and took his hand. "It's okay. She'll understand. This is important." Roman squeezed her hand gratefully. "I'll make it up to both of you when I get back." 2 days later, Zola drove Roman to the airport. As they stood at the security checkpoint, he held her close. "I'll call you every day," he promised. "Just focus on fixing the problems there," Zola said. "I'll be fine." Roman kissed her goodbye, and Zola watched as he disappeared into the security line, his tall figure eventually lost in the crowd of travelers. The first few days without Roman were busy enough that Zola didn't have much time to miss him. They spoke briefly each night, with Roman updating her on the negotiations. Things were more complicated than he had anticipated, and his return date remained uncertain. "The local partners have valid concerns," Roman explained during one of their calls. "They're worried that our financial education programs might not be culturally sensitive enough. They want more input, more control." "And what do you think?" Zola asked. "I think they're right," Roman admitted. "I came here ready to dictate terms, to apply our Miami model without much adaptation. That was arrogant." Zola smiled to herself. The old Roman would never have acknowledged such a mistake. "So what's your plan?" "I'm restructuring the partnership, giving them more say, more ownership. It means a smaller role for Black Tech, but a more sustainable program overall." "I'm proud of you," Zola said softly. "I learned from the best," Roman replied, his voice warm even through the phone. A week turned into 2, and 2 threatened to become 3 as the negotiations dragged on. Zola missed Roman more than she had expected. Her apartment felt empty without his presence, her days lacking the conversations and small moments they had come to share. One evening, as Zola was closing up the studio, Maya approached her with an envelope. "This came for you," she said, a curious expression on her face. "By courier." Zola opened the envelope to find a first-class plane ticket to Singapore and a note in Roman's handwriting. "If you can't come to me, come to you. I miss you. R." Maya peered over her shoulder. "Is he asking you to go to Singapore?" "Looks like it," Zola said, her heart racing with both excitement and uncertainty. "Are you going to go?" Zola stared at the ticket. It was tempting, the chance to see Roman, to explore a new place, but it also felt impulsive, maybe even a little presumptuous. They had only been together for a few months, and while she loved him, this felt like a big step. "I don't know," she said honestly. That night when Roman called, she asked him about the ticket. "I miss you," he said simply. "And I thought, Why should we be apart if we don't have to be? You could teach a few yoga classes here while I finish up the negotiations. We could explore the city together. It's a generous offer, Zola said carefully, but it's also very Roman Blackwell. What do you mean? It's a grand gesture. First-class tickets sent by courier. It's the kind of thing the old Roman would do. Throw money at a problem to solve it. There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment. You're right, Roman finally said. I didn't think about it that way. I just wanted to see you. I want to see you too, Zola assured him. But we're building something real here, Roman. Something based on mutual respect and understanding, not grand gestures and impulse decisions. So you're saying no to Singapore? I'm saying not like this, Zola clarified. Not as a surprise luxury gift. If we're going to travel together, let's plan it together, as equals. Roman was quiet again, and Zola worried she had hurt him, but when he spoke his voice was thoughtful. You're right. Again. I'm still learning, Zola, still trying to break old habits. I know, she said gently, and you're doing amazingly well. Just come home soon, okay? As soon as I can, he promised. The next day, Zola was surprised to receive a call from Vanessa, Roman's sister. Hey, Zola, Vanessa said when she answered. Do you have time for coffee today? They met at a small cafe near Zola's studio. Vanessa looked elegant as always, but there was a tension in her expression that Zola hadn't seen before. Is everything okay? Zola asked after they had ordered. Is Roman all right? Roman's fine, Vanessa assured her, at least physically. But there's something you should know. She pulled out her phone and showed Zola a photo from a society magazine. It showed Roman at what appeared to be a business dinner in Singapore, seated next to a stunningly beautiful woman who was gazing up at him adoringly. The caption read, Black Tech CEO Roman Blackwell with supermodel Alessandra Chen at exclusive Singapore restaurant. Sources say the two were very cozy throughout the evening. Zola felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Who is she? Alessandra Chen. She's not just a model. Her father is Li Chen, one of the wealthiest businessmen in Asia, and one of Roman's potential partners in Singapore. I see, Zola said, her voice carefully neutral. Look, Zola, Vanessa leaned forward, her expression earnest. I know my brother. He loves you. But he spent his entire life in a world where business and pleasure mix in complicated ways, where charm and flirtation are tools for closing deals. You think he's using her to get to her father, Zola stated flatly. I think old habits die hard, Vanessa replied. And I thought you deserved to know what's happening. Zola stared at the photo again. The woman was leaning close to Roman, her hand resting on his arm in a gesture that seemed more than friendly. Roman's expression was harder to read. Polite, engaged, but not obviously flirtatious. Thank you for telling me, Zola said finally. I appreciate your honesty. What will you do? Vanessa asked. I don't know yet, Zola admitted, but I won't jump to conclusions. That night when Roman called, Zola was tempted to ask him about Alessandra Chen, but something held her back. If she confronted him based on a magazine photo, what would that say about her trust in him? Their relationship was still new, still finding its foundation. Was this how she wanted to test it? Instead, she listened as Roman talked about the progress of the negotiations, noting that he never mentioned dining with anyone named Alessandra or meeting with Li Chen. The omission felt significant, but Zola reminded herself that there could be an innocent explanation. When do you think you'll be back? She asked when he had finished his update. 3 more days, hopefully, Roman replied. The final contract should be signed on Friday. I miss you, Zola said softly. I miss you too, Roman answered, his voice warm. More than I thought possible. After they hung up, Zola sat on her couch, staring at the photo Vanessa had sent her. Was this a momentary lapse on Roman's part? A return to old patterns? Or was it simply business innocent despite how it looked? The next morning, Zola woke up to find the photo of Roman and Alessandra had been picked up by Miami news outlets. Her phone was buzzing with messages from friends and students who had seen it. Ignore it, Maya advised when Zola arrived at the studio. Those gossip rags will publish anything for clicks. But it wasn't so easy to ignore when, later that day, a reporter approached Zola as she was leaving the studio. Ms. Freeman, do you have any comment on the photos of Roman Blackwell with Alessandra Chen in Singapore? Are you and Mr. Blackwell still together? Zola kept walking, her heart pounding. No comment. She had barely reached her car when her phone rang. It was Roman. Zola, he said when she answered, his voice tense. I just saw the news. It's not what it looks like. What is it then? Zola asked, trying to keep her voice steady. A business dinner with Li Chen and his daughter, completely professional. The photos make it look intimate because they only show the two of us, but her father was there the entire time, along with 3 other executives. Zola wanted to believe him. Why didn't you mention it when we spoke? Because it wasn't important, Roman said, frustration creeping into his voice. It was one of a dozen meetings I've had here. I didn't think I needed to list every person I had dinner with. Most people you have dinner with don't end up in gossip magazines with you, Zola pointed out. I can't control that, Roman argued. Alessandra is famous here. Photographers follow her everywhere. They saw us at dinner and created a story where there isn't one. Zola took a deep breath. Okay. Okay? Roman sounded surprised. You believe me? I want to, Zola said honestly. But this is the world you live in, Roman. Beautiful women, power plays, gossip magazines. It's so different from my life. It's not the world I want to live in, Roman said quietly. Not anymore. I know, Zola said. Come home soon, okay? We can talk about all of this in person. I will, Roman promised. 2 more days. But the next morning brought more photos. Roman and Alessandra leaving a nightclub together, her hand tucked through his arm. The timestamp showed it was from the previous night, after his call with Zola. This time Zola couldn't ignore the doubt that crept in. She called Roman, but he didn't answer. She left a message asking him to call her back as soon as possible. Hours passed with no response. Zola tried to focus on her yoga classes, on being present for her students, but her mind kept returning to those photos, to the beautiful woman at Roman's side. When her phone finally rang that evening, she answered immediately. Roman? Zola, I can explain, he began, his voice tired. Say it wasn't what it looked like. You seem to be saying that a lot lately, Zola observed. Because it's true, Roman insisted. Li Chen invited me to join them after we signed the preliminary agreement. It would have been rude to refuse. His daughter was there, yes, but so were a dozen other people. The photos only show the 2 of you, Zola said, because that's what sells magazines. Roman's frustration was evident. They don't care about the truth. They care about creating drama. Zola was quiet for a moment. Why didn't you call me back sooner? I was in meetings all day, Roman explained. My phone was off. I called as soon as I saw your message. Zola wanted to believe him. She did believe him, mostly. But a small voice of doubt remained. Roman, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Of course. Is there anything going on between you and Alessandra Chen? Anything at all? Absolutely not, Roman said firmly. She's the daughter of an important business partner, that's all. And she knows that. She's not interested in you. Roman hesitated, and Zola's heart sank. She's been friendly, he admitted, but I've made it clear that I'm in a committed relationship. Has she backed off? Another hesitation. Not entirely. But Zola, it doesn't matter. I'm not interested in her. I love you. Zola closed her eyes, trying to sort through her feelings. I believe you, she said finally. But I don't like this, Roman. I don't like feeling like I have to compete with supermodels half a world away. You don't have to compete with anyone, Roman said softly. There's no competition. No one compares to you. Sweet words, Zola said, but actions speak louder. What do you want me to do, cancel the partnership? Come home right now? No, Zola sighed. I don't want you to abandon your responsibilities. I just want to feel secure in us. To know that your old life isn't going to pull you away from the person you're becoming. It won't, Roman promised. 1 more day, Zola. 1 more dinner, 1 more contract signing, and then I'm coming home to you. The next day, Zola tried to put the whole situation out of her mind. She taught her classes, met with her mother for lunch, and focused on the positive aspects of her life. Roman was coming home tomorrow. They would talk things through face to face, clear the air. But that evening, as she was getting ready for bed, her phone buzzed with a news alert. She clicked on it, her stomach dropping as she saw the headline, Black Tech CEO and Supermodel Share Intimate Moment at Singapore Hotel. The photo showed Roman and Alessandra in what appeared to be a hotel lobby. They were standing close together, and though they weren't touching, the way they were looking at each other seemed intimate. Zola felt sick. She tried calling Roman, but once again there was no answer. She sent a text. I saw the photo. Call me as soon as you can. She barely slept that night, her mind racing with doubts and fears. Had she been naive to believe that Roman had really changed? Was this who he truly was? A man who couldn't resist the allure of wealth and beauty? Morning came with no word from Roman. Zola went through the motions of her day, teaching her classes on autopilot. By afternoon, she had worked herself into a state of quiet anger. If this was how their relationship was going to be, perhaps it was better to end it now, before she invested any more of her heart. She was just finishing her last class when Maya burst into the studio, her eyes wide. "Zola, Roman's here." Before Zola could respond, Roman appeared in the doorway. He looked exhausted, his suit rumpled as if he had been traveling for hours, which he probably had. "Can we talk?" he asked, his eyes never leaving hers. Zola nodded, her heart pounding. "Let me just finish up here." After the students had left, Zola led Roman to her small office at the back of the studio. She closed the door and turned to face him, arms crossed defensively. "I saw the photo," she said without preamble. "I know," Roman replied. "That's why I came back early, because I needed to explain in person." "I'm listening." Roman ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Zola had come to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. Alessandra Chen is not just a supermodel, she's also her father's chief negotiator. The reason she's been at every meeting, every dinner, is because she's integral to the deal. And the intimate moment in the hotel lobby? We had just finalized the partnership agreement. She was thanking me for agreeing to her father's terms, which were more favorable to them than to Black Tech. Roman sighed. "I made concessions I wouldn't have made 6 months ago, because I believed it was the right thing to do. Because I've learned from you that success isn't always about getting the best deal for yourself." Zola wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered. "Why didn't you call me back last night?" "Because I was on a plane," Roman said. "As soon as I saw that photo go public, I knew what it would look like to you. I knew a phone call wouldn't be enough, so I got on the first flight home. You left in the middle of negotiations. I signed the final papers yesterday afternoon. There was nothing left but a celebratory dinner, which I skipped to come home to you." Roman took a step toward her, his eyes earnest. "Zola, nothing happened between Alessandra and me. Nothing would ever happen because my heart is with you. Completely." Zola wanted to throw herself into his arms, to believe everything he said without question. But there was still one thing bothering her. "Why didn't you tell me about her role in the negotiations from the beginning? Why keep it from me?" Roman looked away, a flash of guilt crossing his face. "Because I knew how it would sound. I'm having dinner with a supermodel who's also a business partner. I thought it would worry you unnecessarily." "That wasn't your decision to make," Zola said firmly. "Relationships are built on trust and honesty, Roman. Even about things that might be uncomfortable." "You're right," Roman admitted. "I should have told you everything from the start. I was trying to protect you, but that was wrong. I'm sorry." Zola studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. All she saw was sincerity, exhaustion, and love. "I missed you," she said finally, her voice softening. Relief washed over Roman's face. "I missed you more than I can say." He closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms. Zola relaxed against him, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart against hers. "Don't ever hide things from me again," she murmured against his chest, "even if you think it's for my own good." "I promise," Roman said, holding her tighter. "No more secrets. No more protecting you from the truth." The following weekend, Zola and Roman attended her mother's belated birthday celebration. Elaine had invited a small group of friends and family to a barbecue in her backyard, a far cry from the glitzy galas of Roman's world. Yet as Zola watched him help her uncle set up the grill, laughing at some joke her cousin had made, she realized how comfortable he seemed here, how naturally he fit into her life despite their different backgrounds. "He's good for you," Elaine observed, coming to stand beside her daughter. "And you're good for him." "You think so?" Zola asked, still feeling a lingering uncertainty after the events of the past week. "I know so," Elaine said confidently. "He's not the same man who walked into your studio all those months ago. He's grown, learned, and not just to impress you, but because he truly wanted to change." Zola smiled, watching as Roman flipped burgers with surprising skill. "When did you become such a fan?" "When he showed up at my door yesterday," Elaine revealed. "What?" Zola turned to her mother in surprise. "He came to see you." Elaine nodded. "He wanted to apologize for missing my birthday. Brought me a gift, too." She held up her wrist, showing a simple silver bracelet with a small heart charm. "Nothing flashy or expensive, just thoughtful." "He didn't tell me he was coming to see you," Zola said, touched by the gesture. "He said he wanted it to be between us," Elaine explained. "No audience, no credit. Just a genuine apology from one person to another." Zola felt a warmth spread through her chest. That was the Roman she had fallen in love with, the man who was learning that the most meaningful gestures were often the simplest ones. Later that evening, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Roman suggested they take a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the modest houses and well-tended gardens. "I love it here," Roman said as they walked hand in hand. "It's real, authentic. Not exactly your usual scene," Zola teased. "No," Roman agreed with a smile, "but maybe it should be." They stopped at a small park where Zola had played as a child. Sitting on a bench overlooking the playground, Roman turned to face her. "I've been thinking a lot this past week," he began. "About us, about the future." "Oh?" Zola said, her heart skipping a beat. "The Singapore partnership is important," Roman continued. "It's going to help a lot of people, but it also made me realize something." "What's that?" "That no business deal, no amount of money, no global initiative is worth risking what we have." Roman took her hands in his. "You are the most valuable thing in my life, Zola. Not because of what you give me or what you represent, but because of who you are. Because you saw something in me worth believing in, even when I didn't see it myself." Zola felt tears prick at her eyes. "Roman, I know we haven't been together that long," he acknowledged. "And I'm not proposing. Not yet. But I want you to know that I'm all in. Whatever challenges come our way, whatever differences we have to navigate, I'm committed to making this work. Even if it means more gossip magazines, more Alessandra Chens," Zola asked, only half joking. "Even then," Roman assured her. "Though I'm hoping for fewer of both in the future." Zola laughed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I'm all in too," she said softly. "Despite your billions and your business empires and your complicated past, I love you for who you are, Roman, not what you have." "I know," Roman said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "That's why I love you, because you're the one who said no when everyone else was saying yes. The one who saw me, not my bank account." As they sat there watching the last rays of sunlight disappear, Zola marveled at the journey they had taken. From the entitled CEO who had walked into her studio expecting to buy her time and attention, to this man who had learned the value of earning love rather than purchasing it. And as for Zola, she had risked opening her carefully guarded heart to someone from a world she had always distrusted. She had given Roman the chance to prove himself, to grow, to become more than the sum of his wealth and privilege. Together, they had built something neither of them had expected to find, a love based not on what they could get from each other, but on who they could become together. "You know," Roman said as they finally stood to walk back to Elaine's house, "when I first met you, I thought you were the most difficult woman I'd ever encountered." "And now?" Zola asked with a smile. "Now I know you're the most worthwhile," Roman replied, his eyes filled with love. "Worth every no, every challenge, every moment of growth." Zola stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. "And you," she whispered against his lips, "are worth saying yes to." Hand in hand, they walked back through the quiet neighborhood. Two people from different worlds who had found their way to each other. Not through money or power or superficial attraction, but through the hard work of seeing each other for who they truly were and loving each other anyway. In the end, Roman had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that love wasn't something to be purchased, but earned. And Zola had discovered that sometimes the most powerful yes comes only after having the courage to say no. The end.